Hey folks, it's Steve Wilmes and Matt Kieta over there, and we're doing another episode of the Risk Control Show again, with great sadness and heartache and heartbreak, and we have to talk about this again. I'm sorry. It is the Georgia school shooting at Appalachia High School. A lot of errors, a lot of mistakes, and we just want to talk about it again. I know you guys are probably sick and tired of hearing about active shooters and school shootings. We're just doing some. We're doing a big presentation for um, one of our JPA clients coming up. Going to have a lot of school districts there. We're going to be talking about workplace violence and active shooters. Some surprising things. We just did a big video. I did a big video shooting some books and things like this, all kind of preparing for these active shooters. The um, the thing just it just keeps happening, Matt, and
Yep.
there's so many things that we need to come to grips with as school districts and communities. And so, anyway, lay it out for us, Matt. I mean,
Sure. Well, I will say this as in and as far as how it compares to other shootings. There are some aspects to this one that are a little bit odd. Let me first lay out the facts. A 14-year-old student named Colt Gray opened fire with an AR-15 style rifle at the high school. He killed four people, two
allegedly,
teachers,
this is all allegedly.
allegedly
Yes.
allegedly killed four people with the gun. Two adults, two teachers, that is, and two students. And then there were, I believe, seven others who were injured via bullet by gunfire, and then two others additionally who were also injured in the event. He actually, when law enforcement arrived, he laid down his gun and gave himself up with no struggle whatsoever. And basically he's been in custody since then. They have also arrested his father, Colin Gray, who reportedly, again, I'm not sure how evidentially conclusive this is, but reportedly gave the gun used in the event, gave it to his son as a gift at Christmas. And this was despite the fact that apparently this is on file. There was an anonymous tip about Colt Gray saying he was going to shoot up a school, and that was investigated. This was in May 2023. He was investigated,
Well over a
and
year before.
yep, well over a year ago. Law enforcement did not at that time have determined they did not have enough information at that time or evidence at that time to substantiate the claim. So no arrests were made. But of course, we know that report is out there that he was investigated, and despite that, the father still allegedly provided this weapon to his son. So their charges against the father against the on the basis of allegedly understanding that his son might have a propensity for violence or for participating in a school shooting, and provided him with a weapon anyway. So that's essentially where we are. I think the most interesting part where this is differentiates itself from some other shootings is we had a lot of red flags and warnings before this happened. Even in and above the investigation last year, the mother, who is either estranged or divorced from the father, that I haven't been able to find their exact status, marital status. However, she received a text from her son, per what she told CNN, and said all it said was, "I'm sorry, mom," and she immediately
Yeah,
called the
that's a
school.
concerning text.
Yeah, that's a very concerning text, exactly. And she couldn't raise her son up after that. Apparently, she called the school, and this was approximately 40 to 45 minutes before the shooting began. She called the school to alert them that she had received this text and she was extremely concerned about the health of her son. Keep in mind, if we talked about this off air, Steve, you can confirm as an actual parent. If I receive a text like this from my child, I'm not thinking necessarily about a shooting. I'm thinking about a suicide. But
right?
in any case, it was
Well, but
obviously
I mean, when we go back in the history, they have a lot of previous indicators that something else may be going on here, you know?
right,
And
right,
unfortunately, yes, you should consider suicide, but in this day and age, the methodology of the suicide, whether it's suicide after an event or suicide by cop or suicide by
right.
another shooter, all of this is things that you have to take into consideration as a parent now, unfortunately, and
Yeah,
it's brutal. I hate that you have to do it, but you do.
yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, she alerted the school and she alerted a counselor that she spoke with. And we do have some reports that actions were taken by the school to actually reach Colt. However, we do know that prior to this happening, Colt requested to go to the front office and leave his classroom in his second period class. The teacher allowed him to do so, and he was not in the class reportedly when administrators approached the class. It should be noted this is coming through sources from classmates within the class. The school is declining comment, not speaking about this, and there's no confirmation about what actions were actually taken following the mother's call to the school.
Right.
Um, but
But there's some
according,
reports that
yeah,
they got the wrong name and all
right,
this kind of stuff. And
right.
and again, it just goes to the fact that well, there's so many, but
Yeah.
it's an error, it's an issue. I think, where do I start? We go back to
Right.
I
There's a
mean, just
lot.
reading.
There's a
I,
lot. There's a lot here,
there's a whole
Steve. I know.
bunch here,
Yeah.
and I think you're watching this podcast and you're saying, well, why am I watching it? Well, you're watching it to figure out how to prevent these types of things. So let's talk
Exactly.
a little bit about that. Number one, you'll see people, these news journalists, they make these little comments like it's somehow infrequent or unplausible that a student would get up and take their backpack from the classroom to go do whatever they're going to do. It's not
Right.
implausible, it's not infrequent. It happens all the time. Um, if it's close to the end of class and they have to leave to go see the counselor or the job counselor or the emotional counselor or the nurse or go to the principal's office, they're not going to leave their backpack there. They may take it with them. These kids now have so many things that they're responsible for. They have the tablets, they have the Chromebooks, they have phones, they have wallets, they got all kinds of stuff. You're not going to leave that in a classroom where things get stolen. And we also have the search and seizure issues where we always we don't want our administrative staff or our teachers to get in trouble by going through a personal item. We talk about this with the drug dog searches all the time. Kids are very wise that they take their personal belongings with them so that they can't be searched.
Yeah.
And it does two things. It keeps the administrative staff out of trouble because they don't perform an illegal search and seizure. And then secondarily, the kids are not leaving things behind to be stolen or otherwise messed with or whatever. And,
Right.
if you don't have a lot of money, you're not going to leave these things around to be paid for to be replaced by your parents. You're going to
Right.
take this stuff with you. And in a lot of cases, you may have drugs in there or other
Mhm.
paraphernalia that you shouldn't. Maybe there's notes or whatever that you don't want your classmates to see. So there's just a whole host of reasons, some legitimate, some not legitimate. for students to take their backpacks. But this is not uncommon. It happens all the time. And
And Steve, I'm not sure if I covered specifically that, just so it's clear for anybody who hasn't been following along with the story. Reportedly, Colt arrived at school with the rifle concealed in his backpack, and it remained in his backpack throughout that time. And when he requested to leave the classroom to ostensibly to go up to the front office, he instead went to a bathroom, remained in the bathroom while he pulled out, allegedly pulled out the weapon. This is all alleged, but allegedly pulled out the weapon and prepared for the attack. And reportedly, that attack began when the next bell ring occurred.
yeah, sure. And again, like time wise, we're right there towards the end of the class, right? When this happened. I think, but just to kind of put that to rest, can these items be concealed in backpacks? Certainly, based on the size of the backpack, you get, students bring all kinds of stuff to school, bats, to play sports, golf clubs. I mean, all kinds of things. And so it's not uncommon for students to have larger backpacks or bigger bags or things like this that they bring these things on. So, we have to start to look at, well, how do we detect these things? How do we identify erratic behaviors or behaviors that are situationally out of place? We talk about the situational awareness all the time, Matt. I mean, people got to start doing these classes. We there's just a lot to it. So that's kind of the first piece. The second piece here is something that we talk about all the time, and that's the loosey goosey methodologies around how people take their jobs, do their jobs, right? It's one of these ideas that, gosh, we're so busy and we're so consumed with everything that's going on around us that we don't take the time to get accurate notes or to probe or whatever. And we walk into a classroom and we say, now that it's been reported here by the media that, oh, they got the wrong name. They didn't say what the wrong name was, but there's supposedly two students with the same last name and similar first names. So I said to Matt, like, what are these first names that you could get confused with? And we came up
Right.
with Holt, Colton, Colby, Cole, Conrad, Coulter, right? Bolt, Holt, Jolt, and Walt. None of those really, those rhyme, but they don't really come up with anything close. So how do you confuse this? You play the telephone game is where this starts, right? Who
Right.
took the call? Who was the administrator that they went to get? If you go to the class and you're looking for a person in the class, this comes back to record keeping. And I was just out doing some updates for emergency procedure manuals and comprehensive safe school plans, something that we do a lot for our clients. And we say, okay, well, as part of your emergency plan, you need to have a roster of every classroom who's supposed to be in every assigned to each teacher, especially at the elementary schools. So
Right.
you have systems. So if you type in the last name Gray and you see you got
Yeah.
two, don't you say, well, which one? They seem similar. Which one am I getting? Which one am I getting?
Right.
We don't know that that didn't happen, but we know what did happen. They went and they got the wrong room. And you brought up a great point about the teacher in the room, Matt.
Yeah, that's right. Well, like if they walk in, hey, we're coming here for a student, and then they say the name Gray, the teacher's gonna go, oh, which one? The teacher's gonna know. 'Cause it calls that roll every day, or
Should should
yeah,
know.
should know right away. So you think, and especially since the teacher literally just excused one of them to leave the classroom, you would think that that name would be on top of their head, and that way they would ask the question, okay, which student? I have, you know, Coulter Gray or Bolt Gray, who's still in the classroom, and then I have Colt Gray, who actually should be up at the front office. He just left the classroom after requesting to go to the front office, but
Right?
that conversation didn't happen. So, which makes me think that when again, presuming that the reports are true, that when they came in, they said the other person's name, the other student's name, which maybe led to the teacher not even questioning that it might be the other Gray.
Right. But see, again,
Yeah.
and Matt, you know, we would get on Carolyn for her observation skills, and
Right.
let's see, I went fuzzy here.
Yeah,
Oh,
you
on
there you go.
observation skills, deductive reasoning. Like, are these skills just completely lost? When someone comes to your classroom and asks for a student, you need to make sure they got the right student. Period. End of
Yep.
story. When they say Gray and the other Gray just left, wouldn't that trigger in your mind to go,
Yeah, right.
what's
And
going
it was
on here?
and
This
it
is
wasn't
strange.
like the student asked to go to the restroom, which is actually where he ended up going. He has to go to the front office, which is a more unusual request.
Right,
Usually that means there's something wrong, something that he needs to deal with. Which would raise as a teacher, as an adult supervisor, in my mind, that would raise more of a question of, okay, I hope everything's okay with that person.
right,
And then if
exactly.
someone then walks in and asks for a very similar named person, to me, that name would leap right to my head and say, "Are you sure you don't mean?" Because he's in the front office right now.
Right. Wait, you said Gray? Wait, he
Right,
just asked to go to the office. What? What's going
right,
on here? So so that's a failure. And I think, you look at that. I mean, there's still a lot of facts that are really up in the air. We don't really know what the motive behind this was. We know it's the start of school. We know that,
yep,
newer student at this school. Um, we just don't really have much information at this point behind all these facts, but we know
right,
this. We know it's easy enough to sneak a weapon into the school. We know that we have communication issues. We know that we have lack of supervision issues. And you go, well, we don't want a penal style facility. Understood. I can tell you, Matt, where I went to Orchard Farm High School out in the middle of the country, literally in the middle of the country and in the middle of the country, surrounded by a
right,
cornfield. And, we got teased all the time about, oh, you guys racing tractors out there and stuff. Well, yes, we
right,
were. And we had a lot of fun doing it. But the point
right.
being is that when we wanted to leave, even in high school, when we wanted to leave a classroom, well, we had to have an escort.
Yeah,
If we were going to the office, we had to have an escort. Right? They called down first thing. Okay, I'm sending this person down. If they don't freaking show up within, 2 minutes,
yeah,
okay, then what? Then we're looking for this person, right?
right,
So the these are just little simple things. So I want to move past all that. Like how did the shooter of the former president get by all those people with a weapon? Well, they
right.
didn't. They didn't. He didn't. They
Yeah,
saw
yeah.
him, they
He
were
was
yelling
seen.
about it, they pointed it out, they didn't. Same thing here. The mother's
Yep.
got the text, they call, he's got this weapon inside the school. Somebody knows something and it's been alerted. So now you're on the
Right,
lookout. If this mother actually called and they had the conversation, this telephone game that we play, again, details matter. And I
right,
was saying it before. Powers of observation, deductive reasoning skills. I get on Caroline, I get on Matt. Matt probably hates me because I get on him so much about, like, what are your like, what does this mean to you beyond this? But it's so
right,
important because it can end up in the loss of life, right? What is someone saying over here that you need to process? Are you listening? We do this with conflict resolution, verbal judo. You have to take it to the next step and try to
right,
determine the motive behind it. You do this in sales, whether it's Dale Carnegie sales. What's the buying motive, right? What is the behind the scenes meaning of the statement? And we get these
right,
things, especially now with all these new regulations that we have. So in California, we have workplace violence prevention and
right,
our student on teacher violence and again, this is really funny. I've had two clients call me. What do we do about a student that texts a teacher, I'm going to kill you? Hello, is it? Sorry, I don't. I
Ah,
just like, okay, is it that unclear? You know, it, like it's a text to a teacher from a student. Yes, you should honor that as face value threat. Okay.
oh, Steve, student doesn't mean it. We
Right,
can just ignore it.
exactly. No one ever does anything this didn't. So
Right.
I want to go all the way back, Matt. We have, let's just take the first problem that we have in our schools today, and that is span of control. Our
Okay.
society is trying to do more with less and less and less, and you can thank every software engineer and young programmer that thinks that some software or computer program is going to solve every problem. It is
Right.
not. You have to have managers and supervisors, and you have to have someone in charge of these tasks. And we look at emergency procedures and FEMA, and we look at all the ICS, the EOC stuff, and we look at span of control. And we usually say one person over 16 or 7 or 8, whatever that may be. But here we have a thing where we don't have enough span of control over the level number of students that we have, right?
Mhm.
We don't have
Mhm.
enough counselors. We don't have enough school security officers. We don't have enough people working in the office to monitor. I mean, some of these schools, Matt, are 1,500, 3,000 kids. Some of our clients have
Yeah.
4,000 kids in one high school. I was talking with my mom and dad. My mom had a stroke, as you know, Matt, about a month ago, and I've been back home quite a bit to help out there. But I was talking to my mom and dad, and this shooting event came up while I was there, and I was like, the problem that I think we really have is that there's no level of societal attachment to each other. Like I went to school and there were 63 kids in my graduating class. There were 300 in the entire high school, small school. Everybody knew everybody. So you weren't going to go in and shoot your friend in the face because they said something to you. Everybody
Right.
knew everybody. And you
Right.
had a level of friendship and attachment to somebody. There were people that I didn't like, people that didn't like me, you know.
Right.
But point being is, I'm not going to go on some random shooting spree inside a school because almost everybody was my friend and I knew their families, right? So we get to
Right.
these schools with 4,000 kids. You may be at school, you may know 200 kids, 300 kids, might know
Yep.
30 of them really well, but 3,000 of them, you have no idea who the hell they are.
Right. Right. I mean, you'd be lucky if your brain will even trigger a brief memory splash after 4 years when you hear maybe 1,000 of their names.
Right?
That means that 3,000 of them, you don't even get the memory impact. It
You may
just
have never even run into them.
right. They're in different classes. They run in different circles. They're on the other side of the region of the high school. Maybe you're on one side in one neighborhood. They're in a neighborhood all the way on the other side, and yeah, it
Yeah.
just
So you
yeah.
you have to have a good span of control. And
Yeah.
this is part of our supervisory course that we just put together. And it comes down to your responsibility to have an appropriate budget and be able to justify why you need certain things. And staffing is one of those things.
Right.
So, don't rely on computer programs and all this junk to monitor who is where and traveling where within your school. And we have all kinds of competing interests, right? We have no RFID tracking. Okay, so we can't do that with the students. I get it. I don't want to be tracked, and I don't think our students should be tracked.
Right.
There's a lot of that stuff. But there's got to be ways, like I said, where you place a phone call, I'm sending this person to the office, right?
Mhm.
And they can check up on that, or they go in the hallway and they wait for the student. Um, and that span of control to monitor, to know, to be assigned to a certain group of students so you know them and get to know them is all
Right.
part of it. So we've lost span of control. We have disattachment from societal friendships and relationships. And then we go back to, we'll get into the parent student relationship here in a minute. But, when
Sure.
we look at our society, and you probably remember this, Matt, when we were in the Iron Council, you remember the
Right.
book On Killing by
Yes.
Dave Grossman? When
Yes.
we
Yes.
we go back, we had going back to World War I and World War II, this book On Killing. Let me put this up here real quick. You guys can see what this is. But this book right here, um, great book. I think there's a lot of very valuable information in there. Pick it up, read it. But the point is that World War I, World War II, we had a bunch of soldiers, which are 18-year-old kids, and back then 16, 17-year-old kids going into war and intentionally not killing the enemy. And
Mhm.
and the military determined, and Dave Grossman was one of these people that tried to determine how can we train our soldiers to actually shoot at the enemy and kill the enemy. Like I forget what the ratio was, but it was like one bullet out of what 24 or 400. I mean, it was some astronomical number would actually be
Right.
aimed at the enemy. Right? They were intentionally shooting
Wow.
over their head.
Really?
Yeah. You don't remember? Did you
Wow.
read the book?
I did. I have only read sections of it. I
Okay.
didn't read anything about that.
Yeah. So they were trying to figure out way. Oh, here. In World War II, only 15 to 20% of combat infantry were willing to fire their rifles. Only 15 to 20%. In Korea, about 50%. Vietnam, those figures rose to more than 90%. So, so think about this. You have 100 people, only 15 are actually willing to fire their rifles at the enemy. Okay?
Right.
That tells you we had a society that wasn't hell bent on killing their fellow man, right?
Right.
Now we boosted that. Why did we boost it? For war. Because 18 to 24-year-olds are the ones with the most testosterone, the most susceptible to brainwashing and all the other things, go out and kill. Well, how did they do that? They did it through video games. They did it through, once you enrolled in the military, they did it through actual training there. But you get it with these first person shooter games. We have, and again, I'm not blaming the gaming industry, right?
Right.
Dave Grossman will even tell you that for a mature person who has some concept of what all of this means, has martial arts training, right? They can easily play these games and separate reality from fiction, right?
Right.
But
Right.
these games are part of the methodology that helps to build in this ability mentally to go out and shoot at your fellow man. Now, we
Right.
take all that and we went from 50% in Korea to 90% in Vietnam, and it's only gotten stronger. World War II, only 15 to 20%. We blame the guns all the time. It's the mentality of the Americans that is
Yep.
doing this. And we've gotten to a point where you look at all of the stuff, the degradation of societal values, right? The breaking of the household, the proliferation of weapons, the proliferation of these first person shooter games, the proliferation of war training, all of this stuff, the drugs, Ritalin, all these things that everybody's on. It's just a concoction, and you can't narrow it down to one single, um, what would you call it? One
Yeah. Yeah.
single,
One factor. There
right?
isn't one kind of factor that is the impetus for it all. There are so many different items that are coming in it. I mean, you didn't even some other things to mention that are even part of that. You could have the glorification of violence in our fictional media, in
Yeah,
movies and
absolutely.
shows.
Oh yeah,
You could
without a doubt.
talk. Yeah. Yeah, you can talk about the rise in mental health issues, the rise, but not just actually clinically diagnosed mental issues, but emotional issues, which
Yeah.
I think in some way are more prevalent and more dangerous than, because you can clinically diagnose someone with a mental issue and address that, whereas emotional is much trickier to pin down, but is, I think, more prevalent, and also is can lead to more dangerous results, such as perhaps what we've seen here in Georgia.
Yeah, well, you bring up a great point. We have a 70% drop in what do they call that? When you commit somebody to a mental institution.
Right.
We have the rise in marijuana use,
Hmm.
legalization of marijuana and other drugs. Like if you go to San Francisco and just walk down the street and you see all these people strung out and needles hanging out of
Yep.
their arms, passed out. And it's like, what is going on here? Well, all of these things get thrown in the pot, and that old saying that the sum is greater than the parts comes into play, right?
Right.
And so this is what you have. Well, what do we do about that? What do we do about it at this point in time? You know,
Right.
like what's the rational answer here? Well, you can't sit down and go, okay, we're going to deprogram all of this and take all this out. That's going to take 20 years.
Yeah.
So you have to, that's like saying, well, you know, Matt may come to my house and want to break in, and I won't put my guns away and I won't put my knives away and I won't lock my door. I'll work on deprogramming Matt. Well, that's not going to happen in
Right.
the immediate future.
Right.
So you have to start to use some other techniques. The other
Yeah.
techniques, and I hate to say it because I hate to see this go on, but we're seeing all the visitor registration. We really need to go to the metal detection units inside the entrances of the schools. I mean, how many times have you and I walked onto a campus, walked right past security without any interaction?
Oh yeah. Yeah. All the time. All the time. The majority easily.
Yes,
So, yeah, it is, and it should be noted, it was reported that Winder High School, where the shooting occurred, they did not have metal detectors in place
right.
either. Yeah.
Yeah, and
So,
again, sorry to say it, but with I was looking back when I worked for the JPA, I was looking at some of these new type systems. You have them now at the airport. They're not, the airport is a little more secure in the sense that it does the rotating scan around you. But
right,
some of these units, we're going back 10, 15 years, we're able to process 1,500 people a minute, you know?
right,
So it's not like you even have to slow down the entrance into the school. Um, you can put these in, and what we would do a lot of times is have the school districts build them into the door frames and things like this so they were not visible to give
mhm.
that,
The
uh,
feel of entering
yeah, that
a
prison
a
feel.
prison. Yeah, yeah,
Right. But
yeah,
again, the span of control. So who's going to staff that? I mean, we got problems with school valet. Like we can't even get staffing to get the kids out of the vehicles and into the campus or
right,
when they leave out of the day. So what do you do here? You got to have span of control. You have to have somebody assigned to this stuff. And that
yeah,
means you need money to put in the technology, right? But you have it there with the monitor and you have someone there and everybody that comes in, boom, boom,
right,
boom, boom, boom. And you just do that, right? Can we throw a gun
right,
over the fence? Certainly. Can we hide something on the weekend? Certainly. Matt and I, we do all kinds of penetration testing. We do it for cities. And I got to tell you, the places we're able to get into without any contact, without breaking
incredible.
anything, is unreal.
Right,
And so you have to start doing some of these septet analysis. You have to really start looking out. And again, with the workplace violence, you have to listen to these threats and complaints, you have to use your deductive reasoning skills. You got to put pieces together. You have to investigate and take these things serious.
Yes.
So that's where I look at some of the bigger types of challenges. This whole parent thing, and I think we're finally hitting the precipice here where we are going to see some changes. It is
Okay.
irresponsible for a parent to purchase a firearm for their child and then give that to the child unrestricted.
Yes.
I I have firearms. I have purchased firearms for my child to utilize for certain aspects under my direct supervision. My child never has had a combination to the safe. My child has never taken the gun on their own. My child will never shoot the gun on their own. And all of that is trying to be a responsible firearm owner. When you give your child a firearm and allow them to have free access to it at any time, any place,
Mhm.
well, that's a problem. And that
Yes.
problem's solely on you. And so when we see that this father is being prosecuted along with the child, that's a good thing. And
Yeah.
I think as this starts to shift, you may see parents starting to roll back the access. But in this
Right.
case, I mean, what I've read, the alleged items that I've read or the alleged accusations about this family are mind-boggling.
Yeah, yeah, I'd agree. And I think that you're right too, Steve, about the direction that this is heading because of course we're just coming off of a few months ago the sentencing of both parents
Right,
in the Michigan shooting in
right,
the is that Pontiac, Michigan, I believe that was.
yeah.
The shooting happened I believe late 2022. Um yeah, so those parents were charged and prosecuted because they were irresponsible with how they supplied the firearm that was eventually used in that event to their child. So we start to see this more and more. I think you're right that this is going to become. I'm not sure if saying calling it a tactic is maybe a tad too cynical, but but it's an approach.
It is an
Let's
approach, and
it's an
quite
approach that
frankly, I don't understand why this approach hasn't been utilized more frequently. In California, and like in most states, if you own a firearm and you have a child under the age of 18 in the home, you have to
Mhm.
keep that firearm locked up, or while they're visiting the home, if you're in a separation type situation or divorce
Right.
situation, when they're in your home, that firearm has to be locked in a approved safe and
Yes.
not have access to the child, or the child have access to the firearm. And again, I'm a firearm owner. I love firearms. I'm sure that there are plenty of police and military folks out there that have firearms, need firearms, and there's a way to do it that is appropriate and responsible. And
Yeah.
quite frankly, I get sick and tired of idiots doing stuff like this, or are giving their child firearms, or sometimes you see these YouTube videos of these guys showing their child doing all these crazy things with
Right.
firearms, and you're like,
Those two.
you
Yeah.
know, you're just ruining it for every responsible firearm owner out there.
Yeah.
And is it okay to go hunting for deer? Absolutely, or elk, or whatever, turkey, pheasant. There
Right.
there are some really nice things about that. Um, Target shooting is a lot of fun. There's a lot of skills to that, but you don't just hand your child a firearm and say, "Oh, have fun." Like,
Yeah.
you're
Right.
crazy, crazy.
Right. Right. Exactly. It just it makes you wonder, well, okay, what's the mentality there? Like how does your mind get there where that's okay?
Yeah,
So and that's why I think it's again, it's really important that yes, we are moving towards charging parents more in
yeah,
these. We
absolutely.
are we are because yeah, it's at some level, prior to this, the parents could go, it's like, oh, I feel absolutely horrible that this happened and feel guilty or hopefully feel guilty or whatever, but they weren't afraid of being charged. So there wasn't, usually it takes that threat of a real personal impact for someone to make a change.
Right.
And I think that having this threat out there is going to make people, as you said, Steve, pull back a bit and maybe think a little bit more about how they're providing access of firearms to their children.
Sure. And if you're going to be a gun owner, sorry, it costs money.
Yep.
And locks cost money, safes cost money. If you can't do it right, then just don't do it.
Yep.
Okay? Period. End of story. Because you really are impacting everyone around you, and
Yep.
it's not good. And people have to pay the consequence for your stupidity. So I think when we look at that, right, going back to this communication skills, you got to get down to the details. You have to understand how to take evidence. You have to understand how to make sure that you have the right person when you're looking for these things. Span of control is so huge. Budgets are huge. You have to do training over and over and over again. I know we are battling with the whole training issue all the time. People don't want to do the active shooter drills. We do them. Do I hate them? Yes. Uh, Certainly, it's a break from our day, and it's nice to be outside walking around the classrooms and doing all that to do the drills. I hate that,
Right.
that students have to go through that. I hate that they even have to consider it. I hate that the staff have to consider it. It is, even when we do it at our lowest level, which is very non-intrusive,
Right.
we still get teachers that are emotionally disrupted in a bad way, and it is problematic for our society. And we're
Yep.
raising an entire generation, or two or three generations of students that are living in a world that we really don't like. And as your thoughts and opinions on Israel may be what they are. I've been to Israel, like that country, and one thing that you'll notice if you go to Israel is that if you want to enter a mall, if you want to go to the airport, if you want to go see even a lot of some restaurants,
Right.
then everybody carries weapons, but there are security guards everywhere, and they're
Right.
all fully stocked up. That's not the world that we want to create here in the United States. I don't want to live like that. I don't want to go down to the beach and see the 18-year-old off-duty soldier with their Uzi in their
Right.
bikini at the beach. I just don't, you
Right.
know. But that's where we're headed, and
Yep.
we got to get control of this. So I
Yeah.
think I think our society is one that is steeped in gun culture, but the problem's not necessarily the gun. The problem is our propensity for violence. We have a
Right.
reputation,
It's the behavior.
right?
I know. I know. Gun control advocates hate when people bring this up, but it really does come down to it that guns are essentially a tool.
Hmm.
It's a device. It doesn't automatically kill or point at someone on its own. I mean, unless it's really defective.
Right,
Um, it takes a mind and a hand and a trigger finger.
right,
And that's where the problem is. That's where we need to tackle this.
sure. Yeah, people have been killing people for centuries
Yes.
prior to any firearms being available, right?
Right.
Prior to TV, prior to video games, people have been killing for centuries with stones, sticks, arrows, you name it, they'll figure out a way. The point is the mindset, and we have to get into this. We have to take the temperature of the students, right? We got to know what's going on. We have to understand what they're dealing with. I think there's a lot of communication errors. Like you said, the police went out and they did a spot check a year prior, or a little over a year
Yep.
prior, and didn't take the firearms. You have these
Right.
statements by the child. There's just a lot of problems here. Overlooked, not addressed properly, and these kinds of things make for situations like this. It's unfortunate. It's terrible, and I feel sorry for the families that have suffered the consequences and those
Yeah.
that have been
Yeah. I
injured. And
feel
yeah,
terrible for them as well. It just, it's so tragic. That's the part of this that really gets me is that the ones that end up suffering the most, I mean, we're losing children
right.
here. And look, I'm not saying that it's not sad or tragic when a staff member or a teacher loses their life, but at least I understand that they're adults and they've made that they're there.
No,
Some
it's just
oftentimes,
it's
yeah,
tragic all the way around. I
yeah, it's
think
not tragic all yeah.
it's
I don't,
tragic.
yeah.
I think we
I
just
just hate
have a
to see
special
children
place
lose.
in
Yeah,
our heart because we we feel that in our society, at least, we feel that children are innocent, right?
yes,
They don't have that adult experience yet. So
yeah,
you
yeah.
have
You made the
more.
point better than I did. Yeah.
Well, no, I'm trying to say, I'm trying to say because I get where you're going.
Yeah, yeah.
It's
The
the
teachers are going, Matt hates teachers.
yeah,
She's like, no, I do not. I love teachers. But
uh,
go on.
but there's a sense of innocence in a child. They haven't been
Yeah,
corrupted. So,
yeah,
in this moral sense, right?
yeah.
Um, but our teachers, I think teachers get bad rap a lot of times. There's a few rotten apples out there, just like in the PD. But our teachers, they're innocent too. They're loving, innocent people. When we do this training, we always are telling like no teacher signed up to fight active shooters. No teacher
Right,
signed up to go into combat at school. This is really tough stuff for the teaching staff. It's
right.
brutally tough, and you try to teach a instructor, okay, here's how to use a fire extinguisher if you have to. Like they almost cry just having to hold this, uh,
Yeah,
just to think about it.
right,
So it's like that 15 to 20%. Our teachers are a whole group of individuals that never anticipated, oh, I want to teach. I want to fight people. I want to teach. No, I want to
right,
teach because I want to love on kids and I want to make the world a better place.
right.
So I'm just gonna say this: if you're watching, at the end of the day, you have to do training and you have to understand you are not immune to these types of events. Yes, they're rare, but when they happen, they're catastrophic. You are not immune. Your school is not as secure as you think it is. Your communication is not as good as you think it is. Just understand you have to see the reality. And you're way down here and you need to be up here. Okay?
Yeah,
I'm telling you, we train some schools, and I got some of the best in the world. We've been to the governor's conference. We've talked about our programs at the FEMA National Training Center. I'm telling you, it takes years of continuous training to get there. You are not as good as what you think you are, and you're lucky if it has not happened at your school at this
right.
point in time. So please take it serious, get training, understand what you're working with, and start to fill in the pieces. Workplace violence prevention, SB 906 homicidal threat training, situational awareness, combatives, all these things that you need to put in place in order to stop these things in their tracks.
Yes, yes, exactly. Training saves lives. That's really what it comes down to. You want the calculus, you want the math, taking that training seriously, taking that training saves life. It saves your life. It saves the life of your students. It saves the life of the community.
And with that, we'll let you have a great